It is 3 in the morning and your eyes are open. You did not mean to wake up. The house is silent and dark, and there are still hours before the alarm. You lie there, staring at the ceiling, and a small panic creeps in. Something is wrong with you. You are broken. You cannot even sleep through a single night the way a person is supposed to. So you reach for your phone, or you toss and turn, or you lie there quietly hating yourself until sleep finally drags you back under. But what if nothing is wrong with you at all? What if that 3 a.m. waking is not a malfunction, but a memory? An echo of the way human beings slept for thousands of years, before it was forgotten almost completely. Because the idea that you are supposed to sleep in one solid 8-hour block is surprisingly new. For most of human history, the night had a very different shape. And the proof was hiding in plain sight, scattered across centuries of old books, waiting for someone to notice. That someone was a historian named Roger Ekirch. In the late 1990s, Ekirch was not even studying sleep. He was studying the history of nighttime, digging through diaries, court records, medical texts, poems, and prayers from the centuries before electric light. And he kept tripping over a strange little phrase. Again and again, in document after document, people referred to something called their first sleep. And then, separately, their second sleep. At first, it seemed like nothing. But the phrase kept appearing. In English, in French, in Italian, in Latin. Over many years, Ekirch gathered more than 500 references to it. And slowly, an entire lost world of the night came into focus. Here's how people actually slept. They would go to bed not long after dark. They would sleep deeply for around 4 hours. This was the first sleep. And then, in the dead of night, they would naturally wake up. But they did not panic the way you do, because waking was simply part of the night. For an hour, sometimes 2, people would lie in a peaceful, drowsy, half-lit state of wakefulness. And they would use it. Ekirch found records of people doing all sorts of things in this quiet gap. They prayed. They reflected on their dreams, which were still vivid because they had just left them. They got up and tended the fire, or checked on animals, or stepped next door to talk softly with neighbors who were also awake. Couples, freed from the exhaustion of the day, often used this hour to make love. Some manuals of the time even recommended it, suggesting it was the best moment for conceiving a child. And then, naturally, they would grow sleepy again. They would return to bed for their second sleep, a long, deep stretch that carried them until dawn. 2 sleeps. A gentle island of wakefulness in the middle. For century upon century, across cultures, this was simply what a night was. The deeper Ekirch dug, the more vivid it became. He found the waking hour woven into the most ordinary corners of old life. A 16th century French doctor recommended it as the best time for couples to conceive, since they would be rested enough to enjoy it. An old English ballad described a man who, between his first and second sleep, took up his pipe. Prayer books were printed with special devotions written specifically for the wakeful hour in the dead of night. There were even plain, everyday words for it that have since been lost. The historian Craig Kozlowski, who studies the history of the night, has shown how completely darkness once organized human life, and how radically that shifted when people first began, in his phrase, to colonize the night with light. Before that, The dark was a country with its own customs, and the watch in the middle of it was one of them. People were not lying awake in distress. They were keeping an appointment that everyone, everywhere, simply understood. So, if this was so normal, so universal, why have you never heard of it? Why does it feel so foreign that waking at 3 a.m. fills you with dread? The answer is light. For all of human history, the night was genuinely dark. When the sun went down, the world went down with it. There was firelight and candlelight, but candles were expensive, and darkness was the default. Long nights left plenty of room for two separate sleeps with a waking gap between them. Then came artificial light, and everything changed. As bright, cheap lighting spread through cities, the night began to shrink. Streets that had emptied at dusk now stayed alive. Going to bed early started to seem lazy, even suspect. The hours after dark became time you could use, time you could sell, and the long, dark night was squeezed from both ends. Within a few generations, the two sleeps were compressed into one. People went to bed later and tried to get all their rest in a single consolidated block. And the old practice of first sleep and second sleep faded so completely that it was forgotten entirely. The change did not merely reshape how people slept. It erased the very memory that nights had ever had another shape, until the single, unbroken block was declared the only natural way. You can almost watch it happen in the historical record. As street lamps spread and the night grew brighter, a new kind of nightlife appeared. Coffee houses stayed open. Theaters ran later. The hours after dark, once empty and shared with sleep, became hours of work and commerce and entertainment that could be bought and sold. Bedtime crept later and later, and the long, roomy night that had easily held two sleeps was squeezed from both ends until there was room for only one. By the time the modern factory arrived, with its fixed shifts and its single punishing block of rest, the older rhythm had all but vanished. In just a few generations, a pattern that had shaped human nights for thousands of years was not merely abandoned. It was forgotten so thoroughly that doctors began diagnosing its natural return as a disorder. But your body did not get the message. And that is where a second scientist enters the story. In the early 1990s, a sleep researcher at the National Institute of Mental Health named Thomas Wehr ran a beautifully simple experiment. He wanted to know what would happen if he gave modern people back the long nights of the ancient world. So he took a group of volunteers and, for a month, placed them in darkness for 14 hours every night. No screens. No lamps. Just the kind of long, deep darkness your ancestors would have known. At first, the volunteers slept in one long block, paying off the sleep debt of their busy lives. But after a few weeks, something remarkable happened on its own. Their sleep split in two. They would fall asleep, rest for several hours, then wake for a calm period of about 1 to 2 hours in the middle of the night, and then drift back down into a second long sleep. Without being told to, modern people had rediscovered the first sleep and the second sleep. The pattern was not gone. It had simply been hiding, waiting for the darkness to return. And Ware noticed something else, something quietly profound. During that middle-of-the-night waking, the volunteers were not anxious or distressed. Their bodies were flooded with prolactin, a calming hormone usually released during deep relaxation. They described the state as something close to meditation. A peaceful, floating awareness, perched gently between two sleeps. It is worth dwelling on that because it overturns almost everything you have been told about a good night. You have likely been taught to measure sleep like a bank balance. 8 unbroken hours, or you have failed. But Wehr's volunteers, living in long darkness, felt no anxiety at all about the gap in their nights because nothing in their experience told them to. The distress you feel at 3 a.m. is not created by the waking. It is created by the belief that you should not be awake. Strip away that belief, give the body long darkness and no clock to scold it, and the waking returns as what it apparently always was. Not a symptom, but a feature. A quiet, prolactin-soaked pause built into the very middle of the human night. This is the part that should change how you feel about your own nights. The chronobiologist Russell Foster, who studies how light governs the body clock, has pointed out how much needless suffering comes from a single misunderstanding. Many people who are told they have insomnia simply wake in the night, the way humans always have, and then panic. And the panic itself is what keeps them awake. The waking was never the problem. The fear of the waking is. So, go back one last time to 3 in the morning. To you, lying in the dark, certain that your body has failed you. Maybe it has not failed you at all. Maybe what you are feeling is one of the oldest and most natural rhythms your species has ever known, surfacing through all the noise of the modern world. For thousands of years, this hour was not a curse. It was a gift. A pocket of stillness that belonged to no one and nothing. A quiet space for prayer, for dreams, for the people you love. You were taught that good sleep is a single, unbroken block, and that anything else is a sign that something is wrong with you. But your ancestors would not have recognized that idea, and your body clearly does not believe it. So the next time you wake in the deep middle of the night, try not to panic. Do not grab your phone. Do not start counting the hours you are losing. Just lie there in the dark for a while, calm and unbothered, the way human beings have done for almost all of human history. Let your thoughts drift wherever they want to go. Notice the deep quiet of the sleeping house around you. This was once the most peaceful hour anyone knew, a small, private country in the middle of the night, and it still belongs to you. You are not broken. You are not failing at sleep. You have simply slipped, for a little while, into the forgotten hour between your first sleep and your second. And in that hour, you are more deeply connected to who human beings have always been than you are in all the bright and busy hours of the day.